Hello there, and welcome to my little arty corner of the internet. My name's Angela, and I'd just like to say thank you to all the new subscribers who may be watching this, to those of you who are new to my channel, to those who are returning visitors and old subscribers. I don't mean old as in age, as in who've been subscribers for a while. I'd like to say thank you very much, and for the lovely comments that are left as well. Really appreciate them. It's Tuesday, I think. How is it I can lose the days? I know why I can lose the days of the week, because my usual routine of various sort of like meetings, get-togethers online is disrupted because of, holidays, Christmas. And every day is very much like the same, especially as I work from home. It makes no difference when the weekend is for me, really. So, having a few days off, everything goes to, what's going on here? Anyway, it's a bit damp out. It is nearly 12:30. I managed to sleep in again. I was awake for a while and I went back to sleep. And I thought today I'd like to share with you just a drawing. This is an unusual shaped piece of paper. I think I've mentioned before that I like to make as much use of paper when I cut it down for various sizes as I can. So sometimes I get really odd shaped pieces, and this one I could have cut into squares. It's 8 inches by 4, so I could have cut it into 2 4x4 pieces, but I thought, no, let's keep an odd shaped piece because they're interesting to work with. So either this way or the other way. So before I start doing anything else, I'm going to have a quick circle around for a pencil, which I have here. I shall get my ruler back because I am going to draw a border around this in pencil. I've coloured the background of this with distress inks, but I don't know what colours they were. And I did add a stenciled pattern to the background because I think I mentioned, if you didn't see yesterday's video, I'll mention this again, is that because I'm veering away from adding colour, although I have to work out how I'm going to add shadow and highlight, because I am all about contrast, I just thought it'd be nice to have a subtle background pattern. This one's perhaps not so subtle, so I was a bit heavy-handed. I really don't remember what the colours are. I think there's some rusty hinge in the background, possibly some tea dye. Around the edge looks like aged mahogany, and this is rusty hinge. So they're all sort of like warmish colours of brown. And I thought I'd do this because I have been looking for the last couple of weeks really at medieval manuscripts, and medieval manuscripts are fantastic sources of inspiration for patterns and motifs, colours, how to add shadow, highlight, depth and dimension. Not that they really understood sort of like depth and dimension the way we do. And perspective isn't really shown very much, if at all actually, which I can live with, to be honest. It makes them very charming, and as a lot of my colouring book art is quite whimsical, I don't worry too much about perspective and proportion, because it's more about that whimsy, the fantasy of a world, and working with just, I suppose, patterns and proportions and things like that. So I thought I'd start with a base to this. I think I'm going to work vertically on this. And what I'd like to do here is I'm going to put some S shapes in, if you can see that. I'm going to leave a gap and I'm going to repeat them. And what is happening is that I'm ending up here with these being almost equidistant, which is fine, but I want to make sure where, as far as possible, that I work in pairs, and I'll show you why in a moment. This ends up looking a bit like a rope, and I never ever managed to get that right first time. I wanted to fill this in with a rope kind of pattern. I'm a nightmare at it. But that's where drawing things in with pencils comes in, because you can get it right before you ink it in. And that's about the only time I do use pencils, actually, apart from borders and the like, is if I need to sketch out the basic form. So it's changed a bit in dimension and form from the bottom, but I'm okay with that. Ooh. Did I catch? No. Oh gosh, dropped my lid. 2 ticks. We're having a good day today, obviously. Got it. I don't like leaving pens with lids off, not even for a few minutes. I know you can, but I don't like to. So what I'm going to do to differentiate between the two is I'm going to put bands inside each pair. So I want a gap with no bands in, and then I'll do it like this. And I am roughly copying the shape of the lines that are already there, and I'm also adding that little bit of darkness in the corners, that little bit of weighting, rounding, whatever you wish to call it. And I'm going to do this all the way up, and there is a reason for this. It really is. Because it'll help me remember which is which. So I've got those there, but what I want to do is behind all of these, I want to put some kind of rod, but I can see this goes up and down here, so I'm going to have to, I'm not going to have to, but I'm going to make use of these ups and downs and put the rod in here and here, so it looks like they're going up and over it and falling back down again. So working with that kind of illusion, and I want my thicker pen for that. I did it in pencil first to make sure that I get the lines in the right spaces, because it's easy to get confused, especially as I'm talking as I do this. But it also gives me a chance to check that I've made them fairly equidistant and matching up and so on. I could have just drawn the line straight through them because they're in pencil. So that's all quite nice now, except I need to make this rod look more like a rod, I suppose. So I'm going to thicken the bottom line. And my tendency, or my usual way to add shadow, is to add shadow to the left and bottom. Well, I've only got a left side on these, so I'm going to increase the thickness of the line on this side. I also managed to catch the pen on the paper before I started doing this, so I've got a little glitch there, but I suspect that'll disappear. Now, I've got no idea if that illusion works, if it's three-dimensional in any kind of way, because I'm working really quite closely to it. And it's not until I take some time and distance away from this that I'll be able to see it clearly. But I do know that adding shadows and highlights will really help with that. So I've added the shadow here. This second line down from the top, I've made that line thicker in between the ribbons, the you know, the ribbons, these bits with the lines inside, not over the bands. So that gives that illusion that this is deeper than the bands. The bands are flowing over something. I think that helps. And I also want to put some shadow on this side, just to, I say shadow, I thicken the line, just to give that darkness on that side of the that bar. So I am going to add a line here at the bottom, very close to that bottom line. Because I've got my finer pen out, I can make some adjustments to where my now getting wrecked, close to being totally wrecked, micron doesn't. And the other thing I want to do is I want to add shadow in the background. Now I could do that with a pattern like Tipple, or I could do it with just cross hatching. I could get fancy schmancy and try and bend these to give a feeling that this is curving backwards, which would get, the curves would go this way, but I'm going to keep it simple because I think simple will work. The light's likely to go strange here because I keep getting sudden bursts of bright sunshine, and I could close the curtains and just use artificial light today, but I need the sunshine. It's been a number of days since we've had real sunshine, and if the rain eases off and we've got sunny spells this afternoon, then I will quite happily go out for a walk, I think. But I'm averse to getting cold and wet, and it's very blowy out as well. There were refuse bins, rubbish bins being blown around earlier this morning. Woke me up with noise, and so I had my window open. I tend to, as I sleep, if it's not bitterly cold. Wasn't last night. The colder air helps me to sleep better. Minimises the effects of the hot flushes. Right? I was woken up with the sound of them being blown hither and thither. Just hope nobody's car's been damaged by it. Especially my Binky. Binky is my smart car. The two-seater smart car. Called Binky. The last smart car was called Smartoo D2. The one before that was called Smarty Pants, and more often Pants. I bought it second hand from a private sale, and I was sold a lemon. Nothing I could do about it. I had a new engine put in, and the new engine failed as well. Gee, I had a nightmare with that one. But there we are. Anyway, so that gives some depth to the backgrounds. That darkness instantly throws what's behind, as it were, backwards. So I quite like that. That's really quite nice. And a really simple one. Another way of doing this, because I think I'll put another band here, is instead of doing S shapes, I hadn't planned on doing this. I was going to go into foliagey things, and I'm going to turn it the other way because it'd be easier. What I'm going to do with this one is I'm going to bend these out. I'm going to keep them roughly where these are. I say bend them out, I'm just bending them. I've decided to bend towards the bottom of the paper as it is. And I'm using quite a definite curve, not a shallow curve, it's quite a deep curve, and increasingly deeper as I went along, as I gained some confidence. So I'll do the same as I did before. I'm going to add those inner lines. Just like that. This pattern, it does remind me of like Romanesque architecture, I think, because I'm sure I've seen this kind of pattern either in Romanesque or in Gothic, some such. It's lovely. I could be wrong, mind you, because a lot of these things do overlap. And of course I'm going to pop this line in, and I drew it through these bands this time because I know that for some reason it's easier for me to follow the pattern with these than it is the others. So let's have a look. So again, I'm making the bottom of this kind of cylinder or bar behind it thicker. And I'm also going to do the same with the line to the left. Well, it's the top now, but it'll be the left of the finished drawing, I think. Unless I change my mind and decide to have these like, could almost be spines of books, couldn't they? And then, oh, I don't know. I sometimes talk rubbish. And again, I'm going to add that thicker shadow here in between those curved ribbons, just thickening this line, just to give you that feeling that there's a shadow there and there's dimension. And again, I'm going to put the background in, but this time I am going to curve it. So if you can see what I've done there, I've mirrored that curve, and I'm going to use that curve to add all of my lines. Keeping the lines we add parallel and roughly equidistant from each other, all the way to each side of this shape. And that's the easiest way I know of doing this, is to create that kind of mirror and then work from that, and don't worry about everything else, because even if this is a slightly different slope to this one, it will work out in the grand scheme of things. So if I do that here and here and here, then it'll be just that little bit quicker for me to fill in. Doesn't matter which way you do it, how you work this, whatever is comfortable for you to do. I'm going to do all of these top ones first. See how I more naturally, I think I want to work this way. So I could have turned this upside down and I'd be able to work from left to right, but as long as I'm cautious of how I do this, I'll be fine. So let's go this way. As she says, going to work now top to bottom. There is no rhyme or reason with me. I don't think I have any one particular set way that I like to draw. I think it's whatever is convenient for me at the time. And after years of using sketchbooks to draw in and how cumbersome they can be to twist and turn, turning paper round is actually quite a revelation in some ways. So there we are. So two very similar kinds of borders, but also a little bit on the different side. And I'm so tempted to add shadow here. I'm going to break my, well, I say I'm going to break my rules. I'm not actually. I'm going to use some chalk pastel. I think I've got one. That's violet. I don't want violet. For goodness sakes. I could use violet. Black, I think, would be too dark. So I'm going to go with an indigo blue. I could use brown, but blue stands out just that little bit more, I think. Or This could be the big mistake I make. Oh look, naughty me. There's this one here as well. Oh. Made a mistake, it'll be fine. If I do this, so I've noticed this is one of those generals pastels. They're not easy to get hold of in the UK. Actually, nothing much is at the moment. But they don't spread out as far as traditional pastels, which suits me down to the ground because I don't want them to spread too far. I think I should have used perhaps black, which means I can always go back and use that. If I use this, I always think of whatever art I do, unless it's, you know, meant to be a finished piece, I'm working on something that is going to be finished, then I tend to treat everything as if it's a test piece, a learning piece. And it's okay then to go and alter things and change things. So let me just add some black in here. Black's got a very different feel to it. It feels really quite different, and I think that's why I shied away from it. If I remember rightly, this one does smudge, blends out a lot further than the coloured ones. I could be wrong. And I may actually be grateful for that blue here, actually. I thought I put a lot more black down than I had. It felt like I had. I think the problem is the black, that thick black line that I'd put in there, is that it made me think there was a lot more black there. And the different feel of the pastel, the chalk pastel, as I was adding it, it felt different, as if it was putting a lot more down. It felt more like like charcoal or than a pastel, to be honest. So that's why I've been wearing it. Actually, it works fine. So that instantly helps with that kind of sense of dimension. Now, the one thing I do want to do as well, picking up my O2, is I'm going to do the same here as I did in the other one, and pop that line at the bottom, because that adds something that's a bit like shadow. And I am just going to thicken the line there just to bring that out. And then what I think I may do as well is just pop perhaps a broken one towards the top. There's not much space to do that in that one, but there is here. So the bigger you make that rod, the more space you've got to do things like this. Right, let me put that blue one back so I know which one I'm picking up here. Question now is, I'm using this, have I found my shading tool of choice? Because it is opaque. It doesn't spread out forever, yet it's easy enough to just tease out that little bit that you want it to. Did I say opaque? I meant matte. This could be the answer to my problems, to my desire. Could be. There we go. So does that help? That does help a bit, doesn't it? It does. I think so. So I'll pop that to one side for now. Pop those out the way, because I do want to have some things perhaps growing off here. So I think that'd be quite nice. I think I'm going to start with by creating some leafiness, leafy wondrousness here. And for that, I think I'm going to use a Tangle pattern I haven't used for a long time, but I do like. It's anti-dots. I suppose it's a bit like Flux, but you've got these patterns inside. I'm not sure if the original anti-dots had stripes inside, but I only want to do 3 loops as it is. So the sensual loop will give that blackness, that grounding. So I want to do this again here, and I am doing this very deliberately, so they're going to overlap, so I end up with a frothy leaf border. I say frothy because it does look a bit frothy on the top. Tiny space there. I'm going to fill that with black because I can. I may regret adding shadow to these parts before I do anything else, but you know, I wanted to try it out. And see what happens, because it's always interesting. It's always a bit of an experiment with me. Let me get this. I've got a piece of tissue here that I can use just to pop over that so I don't smudge it. Just blew some loose chalk out of the way. I think there's a fair amount of chalk that comes off chalk pastels, but I can live with that. So I think the only time I'll add shadow as I go is when I'm perhaps videoing, or I'm desperate to see if something I've created works and it's more of a sketchbook page. So I actually do have my sketchbook pages that I've taken some of the motifs from the illuminated manuscripts I've been looking at. Sadly not in person, but online digital versions or images of. But I have ordered some books, which is always good. So there. So I've got a nice edge there. I've got a nice leafy edge to grow things from. Now, I'm thinking, what would I like to grow from this first? I think I will do, because I'm looking at my sheets here and I'm trying to think now, what would I like here? I've got 3 A4 sides of densely drawn motifs and patterns and leaves and goodness knows what. I think I know what I'd like to do. I'm going to leave quite a bit of space on this. And what I am going to do is I'm going to draw some stems in so that I can take some space to create everything. I think for that I'll work with it. It is what it is. And what I'm going to do, what I want to do first is I'm going to draw the outside of these in. This is one of these cases where I am going to use pencil, and I think you can see it well enough and it will come off. with an eraser. Okay, now I need to decide how these are going to loop over one another, because that will be important for me. How is it? At the moment, every time I record a video, I sneeze. Terrible. Oh, where's that eraser I'm looking for? You bet I can't find it. Now I'm looking for it, can't you? Oh yeah. Okie dokes, this will be fine. I've got a bit of a kneadable eraser. So I'm going to have this one going over the top of this smaller one. As I do it the wrong way round. So we'll have this one going over the top. Now this will go under, so that needs to be moved there. That's fine. So I've got them weaving in and out of each other, which will be great. And let me just put my pen lid on. I'm going to draw in some leaves. I'm going to try to keep these leaves fairly simple, because boy do I have some lovely beautiful shapes. I do. And I do want to use some of these. So let me have a look at how I can do that. I'm going to turn this paper around in the direction I can draw them. So these, that's it, that's the way I want it. Oh, I'm going to take off and I'm going to do a lovely S shape. Then I'm going to come back here, out with a point, and then I'm going to swirl around, so I'm doing a curve, but to come back on itself I'm going to start thin and go quite thick, and that's my leaf there. So it's quite an unusual kind of leaf. I did say I've been looking at medieval I'm going to do, I want this one, okay. So on this one I want the leaf to come from the other side, but I'm still going to draw it the same way. So it's the S shape, the curve back on itself, that pointy uppy one, and the one that goes around itself and down to make that leaf shape. I just love the shapes. So let's do this one, an S shape again, point, more of a V shape, curved around and back to complete the leaf. And I'll do another one up here, which will be the S shape, down, up, around, and back to complete the leaf. These may not be exactly authentic or direct copy, because that's not the idea. I've just used those for inspiration, but I do love this kind of shape. I really do. Okay, I think I'll have one more on this side of this small one, like so. Another one here. Like that. That needs a little bit of a kick there, and that could be a little bit on the thicker side. And then any others I can put in once I've drawn the tops in. So let's have a look here. Okie dokes. I do know what I wanted to draw then, I've lost them. There we go, this one. So this involves me starting off, and I am going to start way up here somewhere, and I'm going to draw a pyramid of circles, orbs if you will. So I'm going to start with one there, and then I'm going to draw two underneath, come out from about halfway up the top circle underneath. I'll draw one in the middle, and the next ones again come halfway out. I will draw across this one, and then get some more from the edge. And I'll just keep going with this until I think I've got a big enough pyramid of these circles to start to add some leaves underneath. And I think I'm more or less done. I think I'll just add one more layer in. So I've got this kind of arrangement of orbs. It doesn't have to be perfect. It doesn't have to be perfectly symmetrical. It's just that I find it easier to do. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to leave space on either side of the central part, and I'm going to draw some leaves in like this. And yes, I know it's gone outside my the border I've drawn, but I'm happy for that to happen. So that's quite nice. I'll come back to those in a moment. And then for this one, I am going to draw almost like a, you get the bottom of sunflowers, like, is it, oh, what do you call them? Carnations or pinks? This kind of bulby thing underneath the flower. I've popped that in there. Now I'm putting a couple of lines, sections in it, because that will make it interesting if I decide to add colour or shadow. And then I'm going to have to adjust this curve a little, but it's not going to be a mega thing to adjust. There. And I'll come back and do everything else, because I want to pay attention now to these leaves. Because what I want to do here is create a channel in the middle. Like so. So this is where the veins of those leaves would be. But I've left the leaves or the petals. They could be petals, because I could add some more on the other side. That one almost begs to have another one there, but I'm not going to. I'm going to leave as it is and work with it as it is. I think I should have really popped that in at a slightly different angle, but it is what it is. Should have drawn it in pencil and adjusted, perhaps. So what I'm doing here that you can't see is I am just drawing in circles to fill these channels. I'm not trying to put them one behind each other or anything in any order. I'm just putting them in the best I can. And that adds some real, quite almost a graphic tone to it. It adds interest to the leaves, because they are pretty dull and boring unless you do something with them. But this really does add something to them. And of course they're big enough to do something quite dramatic, I suppose, with it. Starting to get that sense of dimension or volume or just some interest going on here. And the other thing I want to do, and I'll do that with a thicker pen, is I am going to do this thing where sorry, I'm just rearranging myself slightly here, where I thicken these lines to the left and the bottom. So this is the bottom line, as is that one. I could put a little bit there for the left. But this one is to the top, but the bottom left is there, and this also needs to be a little bit thicker, as does that one, and perhaps a little bit there. And this, trying to work out where I want to make this thicker, that would work. And I can do the same with these. I don't know whether I'm going to do every single one of these, or whether I'll just do the important ones that help to define the shape. Perhaps I will do quite a few of them, because it will help. I think so. Again, I'm giving it that kind of woodcut or lino cut feel. Almost like it's been drawn with a flexible pen that people would have in medieval times. Now I can see that I've got space here on this one to add, oops, perhaps one of these leaves. I don't draw them. They're not familiar enough to me to be able to draw them easily at the moment, but they are, I actually think I might pop one in here somewhere. That'd be quite nice. I think we could do with one on that side and over here as well, so perhaps I'll do this one. Like that. That just helps to fill some of that space in. I haven't got any of them touching one another really. That's unusual for me. But I think I can pop this line in now, and I can actually draw these in as I go. And although I've got the pencil line in there, I do treat it just as a guide. I'm not worried about this line because it looks almost like I could complete it, and it looks like that leaf is growing off from behind it. That might make a bit of sense. I'll do that with that one. With my others, because that was one I added in later than I'll add the others. The other leaves will happily be drawn as they need to be drawn. Just take that one down, and then so they're working out quite nicely. I think so. This stem looks a bit bare, but bear in mind that I'm going to have these ones here. Although I could perhaps sneak one in. There, that would look okay. And I think, looking at this, I do need another one up here. So those will be fine. In fact, I think I will close that stem off everywhere along, and then they're consistent all the way. So that's my first flower. Hopefully I wasn't too much off camera for this. Okay, so I'm going to do another one here, and I will extend the stem just a bit because I need to think about how big the triangle is I need. So I'm going to draw that in, and then I've got space for my leaves there, which will be lovely. So again, I'm going to start by drawing this in. Like this. They really do end up looking a bit like scales, so you could draw them just like fish scales. But I'm trying to get a bit more that feeling of roundness here. And I can go back and adjust the others a little bit, perhaps. Where I put the rounding and the lines in. I think that'll work quite nicely. So I'm going to do some of these with a thicker line. Because I've worked this pen so hard, its nib is now a bit more flexible than it was. So it's possible to get thicker lines by pressing harder. It's not something I'd like to do normally because they do end up not working properly very quickly because they're not really meant for that, so I don't think. And I am concerned about not making the best use out of ink and everything. So what I've done, I've actually ordered a fountain pen. Not that I don't have any fountain pens, I have plenty. But I've been looking at the TWSBIs for a long while. And the Eco Tank has a bigger volume for ink, so they last longer. And the reason I've bought one is not just that, but I did some research to see if I could find any permanent waterproof fountain pen ink. And there's quite a number of brands. You can't put any old waterproof ink in a fountain pen because of the way that fountain pens work. But I actually found one. I can't remember the name of the company. And it's document ink that is permanent waterproof. It's used in sort of offices where people register deaths and births and marriages and for legal documents in lots of places, in places. No, the ink's made in Germany. But it's suitable for fountain pens, so the information says. And it's waterproof and archival and permanent, and as long as you recap the fountain pen after you've used it, which I do anyway. I don't understand why anybody would want to leave a lid off a fountain pen when they finished using it. And I recap these as soon as I finished using them, even if I'm going to pick them up again in a minute or two. And so I ordered a nib that's fine, but I do have a fair collection of fountain pens. Not all of them have the tool that you have you know, the insert, the converter, that's what it is what I'm looking for, the word. The converter, so you can fill them from ink bottles and not use cartridges. I think they should come as standard, to be honest with you, in this day and age. Encourage people to not use plastic cartridges, although somebody I knew only ever wrote with a fountain pen and would fill the cartridge with ink from a bottle using a syringe. Not a syringe you'd inject yourself with, but one that's used for measuring liquid. Science teachers, you know, we have access to such things. And so the cartridge, the plastic cartridge, would last and last and last. So I suppose that's a good alternative. And it means you don't have the mess of filling the pen up from the bottle. So that's an alternative kind of flower. That one actually looks a lot bigger than the other, but it's fine. I'll need a little to do one here. In fact, I think I might put a bud there rather than a full flower because I wouldn't get one in. But it's time to ink the stem in. You can see I am going, I did want to do the thicken some of these lines first. See where they overlap like that. It's that thickness of line gives you that sense of dimension as well. There we go. Helps them stand out. A lot thicker line than I'd normally draw with, I do have to say. And I think anybody who knows me knows that. Well, or rather, is what people are used to seeing me draw. And you can see that even though I've penciled these in, I'm making adjustments as I draw, as I become familiar with this particular leaf shape. Essentially, simply because I can do that. I'm not going to, I may actually pop one in there, but I'm going to put the stem in first. And I am going to pop this one in and then that one like that. There we go. So that's working okay. And I did say I'm going to pop one in here, so that looks quite nice. Okay, now I need a bud here. So what I think I'm going to do first is I'm going to pop some smaller leaves in. I'll make that leaf here smaller when I draw it in. And then what I'm going to do is I'm just going to build up perhaps a berry shape. Like that. And that will, I think that'll work fine there. And I will, while I'm here at it, I will just thicken those lines where they're at the left and the bottom as I look at it the right way up. So I hope you saw what I was doing. I was focusing on sorting this out rather than anything else. So I now need to pop the stem in. So let's have a look. So let's go down to here, and I will do this leaf. Like so. Carry this one on down here. Oops, it's fine. Behind here. Then I've got this leaf that grows over the stem. Which can just go like that, I think. Can. There we go. And then the very last bit is this one, which I need to make that adjustment on, which is easy enough. Now I've got the hang of this leaf and how I want to draw it. Certainly this time anyway. And there we are. We have the whole shebang there. Now, there is a lot of blank space on this. There really is. So you hear me creak and everything. Give me a moke so I can just adjust that, so perhaps you'll get to see the whole image. So look, can we get it all in one shot? Yeah, we will. Sorry about that. Need to focus. There we go. Just lock it. So that's done. I do want to put some kind of border at the sides, even though these will spill out. And I'm not entirely sure what I'm going to do with that. I could use something similar to these at the bottom. I could. Or I could use some kind of leafy border or some kinds of columns. My head is thinking, do I need anything that's horribly ornate here? Or, I say horribly, terribly ornate. And the answer is most probably not. I just think I need to perhaps just pop in. I'll ink in the pencil line. I'm going to do it completely straight, as it is. Well, as straight as I can draw it with my hand. Okay, it meets underneath there, so I don't need to worry about that. I'll pop that bit in. I'll go down here and down here. I always feel so much better when there's a border or that distinct edge. Even though these are growing outside of the edge, I just feel so much better. Now there's lots of little touches and finishes that need to be done here. And before I do those, I am going to just take away, erase this pencil drawing here, because that will help me see what I need to do. And I do know what I want to do, I think. I do know where I need to start with something though. Get rid of all the little bits of pencil lines that stick out. And yeah, I've got a pencil line there, so I'm going to be erasing some of that pastel, which is perhaps no bad thing. Got some up here, which will be fine. And over there and there. I've got everything, more or less. There's some bits that have found their way into the paper, but they do come out. And I actually might see if I can lift more of that off later on, perhaps, which is a fair amount come off already, so we'll be okay. Right. Now then, I've got my O2 here, because the first thing I want to do is with these leaves on this tiny version of a flower that I'm calling a bud, because it does look more like a bud than it does a flower or whatever these strange things are. I like them. I get the opportunity as I'm using a fine pen to just make little adjustments here and there to tidy up lines where I've perhaps not been as neat and tidy as I could be. This does look different to the others because I started at the bottom and worked my way up. So instead of these looking like they're overlapping from the top down, this one looks like it's growing up to a point. But that's okay, it can exist like that. Okay, so that looks a lot better. Now then, these here, this is where I'm going to make use of fine pen lines to add shadow in. Hatching lines, shadow lines, shade lines, I don't know what you call them, somebody will correct me, but I'm putting them in like this. And I am making sure, because I find the best way to do this so you don't have the pressure on the pen eases off, so you get that natural thinning of the line as you flick it. Is the greatest pressure is where you start, and as you flick it, it decreases in pressure until the pen's off the paper. I find it easiest to do that if I'm working away from my body. So I will move things around so that I can do that. These leaves, I'll want to do this from the top, but I'll also want to do some from the point up so I get that feeling of shadow. This is my alternative to using chalk or pencil. And when I've finished, you can tell me which you prefer. Doing it this way, it also gives me the opportunity to use flat washes of colour or just very slight gradients of colour if I wish to. And with this, I would use the same colours as the background. So I'd look to Rusty Hinge or the mahogany, the aged mahogany perhaps, or tea dye, or perhaps a combination of them, to add colour. So it's in keeping with that. Now if you look at this and the difference that has made, those lines have made compared to the other leaves, and here, yes, it does take a bit of time, but not as much as you might think. And there's logic to it, and it's just a question of making sure you repeat it on each one. So and you don't put any extra, well, I don't put any extra pressure at the beginning of the lines. I just touch them with my normal amount. It's the flicking that changes the thickness of the line. If I was using one of my flexible pens, flexible nib pens, the Fudenosukis, then yes, I could start with a lot more pressure and ease it off. Or if I was working digitally, I certainly can. I can set pens up that will allow me to do that, to vary the thickness with the pressure of my pen. And I can flick it like this, or you just learn how to do it. But with pens on paper, I find it far easier to do it this way. And I do really love the finish on this. I don't know why I haven't done it for so long. I think it's because I'm so desperate to get colour to work for me. I want to work with colour, and yet when I do, there's always that, why did I think that? Whereas my skills are more with pens and contrast, and this gives instant contrast. Yeah, I could put embellishments on here. I could use gold to add. In fact, I've got plans for something like that. I like to put shadow at the tip, so you get like the centre of the leaf has the highlight, almost like it's curving backwards on its, you know, curves up and back, and that gives plenty of gives that feeling of volume as well. the illusion of it. I've got to do the tips on these, but you can see, again, just compare for a moment the difference this makes between this one and this one. These leaves are a bit strange. I may have to add another one in somewhere just to make it, it looks odd here. I can't, this is how I really needed them going, but I didn't draw them in that way first. So let's add some, do these because it doesn't take too long. On the edges here, I am putting shadow in underneath where these overlap. And that one is a bit of a scruffy one here because I needed to go back. And you can, it's sort of like, I'm trying to vary the length of the lines. And if I want it darker, close where the shadows would be greatest, I just put shorter lines in, more closer together. More closely, yeah, closer together. And that then will add that darkness that we're looking for, or I'm looking for. Again, just let the edges fade out so that you gradually get fewer and fewer lines. You know, I could add dots there if I wanted to, as if the lines are beginning to break up, but it's that difference in the length of lines that adds that organic kind of feel to it, a more natural feel, where they're all perfectly the same length. There's something, it doesn't look right. I'm sure it would do perhaps on things that are mechanical or metallic, very shiny, very smooth. But I haven't got metallic leaves here. I could have metallic leaves if I wished, but I don't wish. And yet I am moving my hand very quickly. I'm not too worried if the lines are a bit wobbly or they overlap in a weird way. It's about building the density of line up gradually rather than trying to do it all in one go, and getting some of those longer lines in to begin with. I think I tend to try to put, because I'm remembering how to do this, I think I tend to put the longer lines in further apart, and then I come back with the shorter lines to fill in that density of line that I want. You put the longer ones in first, it's easier to judge where you need the shorter ones and how dense they need to be. You never go further than those longer ones down. So there's that one. I am going to add some shadow at the tips of these. Oh God, trying to turn it around so I can do it the way I'm comfortable doing it. And same idea, just as far up as I want to go with the shadow, and then working back with shorter lines. Though it's such a small area, there's not so much work to do, but I think it does make all the difference. Well, it makes some difference in the world. I won't say all the difference, but I just think it helps to add that shadow in. The very last one. Okay. Now I like that. I do like that, and I wish I'd done that down here instead of using a chalk pastel. To be honest, so the chalk pastel is now officially going back in the pastel pot. I'm sure I will find uses for them, but I like that. Now then, for these little ball shapes. How am I going to do them? I'm not entirely sure. So what I'm going to do is I have my sketchbook page here. Yeah, it's A4. You can see how busy this is. The leaves that I drew are sort of this one, just this part. I didn't complicate it by stacking it, but I've got variations on it with them more complicated. I kept it fairly simple, not the simplest I could have done, but fairly simple. But let's have a look. So how am I going to add shadow to these? Well, it's going to be darkest at the top. And I really want to curve these lines around, because it's the curve that will give that feeling of shape and form. They follow the contours of the berries. So let me just do a couple more just to see how that will look. Got shadows in an odd place, because I could imagine like there's shadows here. And I could stipple, but stippling is useful. Pain, but it's useful. I think I'm going to do something like that. I just wanted to check what it looked like before I did anything. But I think what I'm going to do instead is I'm going to turn this the right way. I need to flick away from myself. I'm just going to have the longest ones to the, well, what's now my right, and shorter ones here where there would be that darkness underneath them. So I am just trying to be aware of where I'm putting these. That one at the top threw me, but I think it'll be okay. It's more about setting a pattern up, I think, than it is realism. It's more than anything else. So let's have a look. It'd be better if I just turned it this way. Yeah, because I haven't really got the angle of the curve right here, or the direction I wanted that curve in. Yeah, I'm not taking it right to the bottom of each of these balls, orbs, things. Seeds. I'm leaving the highlight at the bottom. If you ever look at something that's reflective or not, and where there are shadows, you often get this little highlight or reflected light at the bottom. So the darker edge doesn't always go down as far as you think it will. I've got some very strange shaped lines there. And I think what I'm going to do to help myself out here is I'm just going to start to cross hatch them, so I can just get some feeling that these perhaps circular, more circular, by using lines that are following contours almost at 90 degrees to these. I think that will help. It's not the best. I haven't really thought this through. But we'll have a look and see. bit heavy-handed, or not quite right, but maybe I'll go back and fill them in with black with a highlight, but I'm making a start. And the last thing I need to decide, well, there's the stem, but there's also these leaves, and I'm not really sure what I want to do about these. I do know I want to add some of this rounding in these areas, because it will really help to bring out some structure. It adds that blackness that just, well, it just works, doesn't it? But if I shape them, especially around here, then it adds an extra shape. You know, that round, well, when I say here, these round bits that curve around, I've got the opportunity to add a black shape in there that will emphasize that and adds that shadow in as well. Not so easy to do on all of them, but we'll see how it goes. And where they meet the stem, that's somewhere else I need to be mindful of having to pop some of that weight in. Not everywhere. Well, yeah. I'll say perhaps not everywhere, but everywhere where it's appropriate. Be a better way of saying it. So let me just get that in there. That whole one there can just be black. It's a very small region. And this one, I didn't really get much in the way of that curviness there, so I'm going to adjust it with the pen there. So that'll work nicely. As will that. Okay, this one here. Much easier to put these little details in with a finer pen. So I've swapped the 02 from the 05 because with the 05 I know I would mess up, and as irritating as it is to add black ink this way, I get there. The one thing I'm going to have to be really mindful of when I start drawing again with a fountain pen is the drying time of the ink. Be very careful where I put my hands. So I must probably be using pieces of kitchen towel to put under my hands so I don't smudge things. So even just that little bit of those bits of black have just brought those to the forefront somewhat. I think you'd agree. Made a right mess of those, but I think it's fixable, possibly. I just need to think about what to do, because I need to think about what I'm going to do with that, and I need a break. I need more tea. I think I'm going to call it a day on this one for now, and I'll work on it perhaps later on today, see where I get, and then I'll come back and show you tomorrow what I decided to do, how I decided to add things to this, and perhaps the embellishments. I say tomorrow, my next video is perhaps adding some embellishments, or I'll show you what I've done, because I've got an idea. It's quite common in medieval manuscripts to outline things with dots, and I think that on this, gold dots would be really rather nice, because everything is pretty much one colour except for down here where I use that blue. I'll see if I can remove that, and may be able to with a different kind of eraser. Failing that, I'll just use some distress ink or something else to colour it in one colour, and I'm likely to go back and add lines like this down here, just to increase that contrast. I was going to finish, but pick my glasses up. Let's have a look and see what a difference that would make. So again, I'm just going to flick part the way down. The worst thing that happens is that I make a right pig's ear of it, which I've already done anyway. And it may be that I may go back and just colour these in entirely in black and add pattern on the top. So let me have a look and see. Now that looks really messy now. So it may be that just plain black might be the way to go. So let's have a look. Before I leave you, everything is fixable. It is possible to always hide the crimes or what you're not satisfied with. In my case, I can easily get rid of all of that blue by using black, and then I have an opportunity here with all of that black to use something else, perhaps to add that hint of pattern behind, or just leave it all black as if there's a really deep dark shadow there. So I will leave this part way through so you can see the difference it makes. I'll do the same with this one because consistency is, as far as I'm concerned, important. And as I quite like things that are really quite graphic, I think this will work quite nicely. And I am aware I haven't actually put any extra shadowing on the bands on here. Now, whether I do that with pen or whether I'm going to do that with colour, I don't know at the moment. Because I could pop some in the central areas. But that, I like that. That actually works really quite nicely. So yes, don't use pastels anymore. We're just going to use pen. I can see me having a big D stash and then I'll go back and change my mind again. I really do need to think about what I'm going to do here because that does look a bit odd, but I could just leave as it is. It's just, that's nature, isn't it? Nature is random. Perhaps the leaf is beginning to fall off and I could put a leaf floating away here. That could work. That would add a bit of whimsy, wouldn't it? I'll think about that. I'll pencil it in. See? Add a touch of whimsy there. And see. That actually doesn't look too good. I really do need one that looks like it's floating away. This is the problem, is that let's draw this central bit in first. Perhaps that'll look, no, perhaps not. Seemed like a good idea at the time, but in practice it isn't going to work. So, importance of pencil. Perhaps I should have cross-hatched in pencil. But there we are. So that's as far as I've got now. So I hope you've enjoyed that. It's something a bit different from me. I don't often draw images like this, and certainly don't leave as much open space. But part of me is thinking that's ripe for adding like background patterns in a pen that is just slightly darker in colour than the background colour. And I'm sure I have some like that. And just filling this in with subtle pattern behind there. I do think that may work. I don't know for sure. It's a test piece. That's made it a test piece now. That leaf there, that dratted leaf. But Oh, I wonder. Let's have a quick look, because it's 1 hour 25 minutes. I've been here already, so a couple more minutes. Let's look and see if that helps at all. It's clumsy. I've drawn it upside down, haven't I, instead of the right way up, so... But that may just work there. Actually, that kind of does. It's a bit odd. I couldn't put whole ones in, but partial ones kind of work. Kind of. Possibly. So yeah, so that'll work. That makes it feel like it belongs there a bit more. It's not so sticky outy. So it may not be a perfect fix, but it's a fix. So there we are. And I am going to say thank you very much for joining me. I hope you're enjoying this mammoth video, and I will show you in my next video how this turns out, because I suspect I'm going to spend a fair amount of today working on this. So look after yourselves, take care of yourselves, and find time to be creative, and I'll see you again soon. Bye-bye for now. Bye.